1 week after I moved into the new house, the former owner rang me. I forgot to disconnect the living room camera. I accidentally saw something. A secret. Don't tell anyone. Come alone. When I arrived, the monitor lit up and began playing footage that stole the air from my lungs. What I discovered was a savage truth about the two people I trusted most in the world. Within the next 72 hours, I swore I would construct the most flawless trap possible to reclaim everything that was rightfully mine. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell, and drop a comment telling me which city or country you're watching from tonight. Important disclaimer, this is a fictional dramatized story created for entertainment and storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to real persons or events is purely coincidental. That said, the themes of trust, betrayal, family deception, and self-protection carry real emotional weight. Let's continue. The rusty hinge gave one last metallic groan before silence swallowed the workshop again, until the phone buzzed in my pocket like a trapped wasp. I am Elias Hawthorne, 63, retired structural engineer. I was tightening the final screw on the workshop door when that call arrived, the one that rewrote the rest of my life. Late September light sliced through the dusty window, turning floating sawdust into tiny golden planets. The familiar perfume of linseed oil, old pine and machine grease usually calmed me. 3 years since my wife Clara passed, this smell had become my anchor. One more half-turn and the door would hang perfectly silent, just the way Clara always wanted it. I fished the phone out, still tasting yesterday's coffee. Unknown number. In a small town like Willow Creek, you answer anyway. Elias? The voice was hoarse, hurried. I recognized it after 2 heartbeats. Malcolm Reed, 74, retired letter carrier, 3 houses down. Normally his voice moved like molasses. Today it trembled. He said he was calling from his own porch. Then the sentence that made the workshop walls feel suddenly closer. I made a mistake with the security system I helped you install last spring. I never removed my cloud login from my old tablet. Elias, I saw something in your living room while you were out. My pulse thudded against my eardrums. For months my neighbor had unintentionally had a window into my private life. Before I could speak, he rushed on. It concerns your son, Elias, and that wife of his, Lauren. The names landed like cold nails. Daniel and Lauren had come for roast chicken just 3 nights earlier. Everything had seemed perfectly ordinary. Polite laughter, second helpings, promises to bring the grandchildren next time. Malcolm refused to say more on the phone. Too sensitive. Come to my place. Alone. And Elias, do not call Daniel. Do not text Lauren. Not until you've seen it yourself. My son has been my compass since Clara left. The notion that Malcolm was implying something dark enough to demand secrecy felt like someone had punched me below the ribs. My grip turned the phone case slick. What exactly did you see, Malcolm? The line went dead. I didn't bother putting the screwdriver away. I didn't lock the workshop. The engine of my pickup snarled awake with a roughness that matched the sudden hammering in my chest. I reversed out too fast. Tires chirped. 3 short blocks later, I pulled into Malcolm's cracked concrete drive. The house looked tired, peeling sage green paint, boxwood grown wild. A man who had quietly given up on appearances. Malcolm opened the door before my boot hit the bottom step. He appeared a decade older than last week. Sunken eyes, shoulders rounded under an invisible yoke. He didn't speak until we were inside the small den that smelled of pipe tobacco and aging newsprint. Trust is glass, he said quietly. Once shattered, you spend the rest of your life seeing the cracks even after you glue it back. He motioned toward an old laptop on a cluttered side table. The screen glowed cold blue. Malcolm reminded me of the afternoon he helped mount the cameras before my trip to Portland. He'd forgotten to revoke his own access. He hadn't meant to snoop. But one evening he glanced, and couldn't unsee. There weren't one or two conversations. There were 7 separate recordings, all made while I was at physical therapy or running errands. He hesitated, index finger hovering over the trackpad. Then he clicked. The timestamp read 3:47 p.m. grainy, but unmistakable. My living room. My son Daniel, 36, logistics supervisor, sat on the couch I'd reupholstered myself. Beside him, Lauren, 34, real estate agent with the easy smile, leaned forward, twisting the silver bracelet I bought her when she graduated college. They weren't visiting. They were working. Daniel opened a manila folder I recognized from the bottom drawer of my desk. He pulled out a multi-page document and, laughing softly, practiced my signature once in the air before applying it to the real page. "It's not stealing if it's eventually ours anyway," he said, voice tinny through the speakers. The betrayal wasn't impulsive. It was rehearsed. Lauren nodded slowly. Daniel explained, calm, clinical, how he had padded the medical power of attorney packet I signed 3 months earlier. 2 extra pages slipped in after I initialed the healthcare directives. Those pages granted them sweeping control over every financial account and, most critically, the deed to the house Clara and I paid off 21 years ago. I watched my own son treat 38 years of engineering salary like loose change on a bar. Lauren glanced toward the hallway once, as though expecting me to walk in. Daniel silenced her hesitation with 6 words. "Your father trusts you, Lauren. That's his weakness." The room Malcolm and I stood in suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. I stood motionless in Malcolm's dim den while the video looped silently on mute. My own living room, every familiar detail from the faded floral throw Clara chose in '98 to the walnut coffee table I built during a long weekend, now felt like a crime scene. Daniel's voice came back through the speakers when Malcolm unmuted it. "Once the power of attorney is active, we route the 401k distributions through the new joint account. Small amounts first. He won't notice. He never checks the app." Lauren's reply was softer, almost hesitant. "But what if he gets suspicious? He still reads every statement line by line." Daniel gave the short, impatient laugh I'd heard 1,000 times when he was 16 and thought he knew better than anyone. "That's why we do the medical directive first. He signs because he trusts you, Lauren. After that, the financial clauses are already buried in the packet." He initialed the whole thing without reading the addendum. "We're golden." I felt the floor tilt under me. The medical power of attorney had been my idea, simple protection in case another stroke like the small one last winter left me unable to speak for myself. I'd asked Daniel and Lauren to help me prepare it. I'd handed them the pen. Malcolm paused the footage. "There are 6 more files," he said quietly. "Different days, same plan. Different excuses they give each other when one of them hesitates." He transferred the folder to a USB drive the size of a postage stamp and pressed it into my palm. His hand shook slightly. "I lost almost everything to my youngest 15 years back," he murmured. "Started with just a small loan for the mortgage. Ended with me eating ramen in this house while he bought a condo in Reno. I won't watch it happen to you, Elias. Not if I can help it." I managed only a nod. The words "thank you" felt too small. Outside, the September evening had turned cool and sharp. I sat in my truck for a long minute, engine off, staring at the USB in my hand like it was a live grenade. Then I drove, not home. I couldn't face those walls yet, knowing every corner had been measured for plunder. I ended up at the old Riverside Diner on the edge of town, the one that never closes. Neon buzzed above the door. I took the corner booth farthest from the windows, ordered black coffee, and opened my laptop. First file, Tuesday. Email setup. Daniel at my dining table, showing Lauren how he'd created a forwarding rule on my email account. Any notice from the bank, the county recorder, the investment firm, everything routed to an address only they controlled. He barely logs in anymore, Daniel said on screen. Too busy with his little woodworking projects. Second file, Thursday, deadline talk. Lauren pacing my kitchen, voice tight. We have to file the deed transfer by the 28th. The broker says the buyer is ready to close cash. If we miss it, the whole chain collapses. Buyer? My house wasn't on the market. Not yet, apparently. Third file, the one that made bile rise in my throat. Daniel alone in my living room after midnight, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and furious. I told you, I'll have the collateral by the end of the month. 180 large. House sells for 320 easy. You'll get your cut. He wasn't talking to a mortgage lender. The slang, the veiled threats in the background voice, he was deep in with a private gambling syndicate. The kind that doesn't send collection letters. They send people to schools, playgrounds, front doors. He mentioned my grandson Caleb, 7 years old, second grade at Willow Creek Elementary. Kids always at recess at 10:40. You want photos for proof of leverage? I can make that happen. I paused the video. My hand shook so badly the trackpad rejected my touch. I pressed my palms flat on the cold Formica tabletop until the tremor stopped. Daniel wasn't just stealing from me. He was bartering his own son's safety to buy time. Fourth file. Daniel in my kitchen again, same late hour, different call. This time the voice on the other end was female, light and intimate. Not Lauren. Once the sale closes, I'm out. Lauren thinks she's coming with me to Belize. She's useful for now. Good signature. Good cover. After that, she's excess weight. He laughed. The same laugh he used when he won at cards as a teenager. Pack light, sweetheart. Belize is warm year-round. I closed the laptop. The diner's fluorescent lights flickered once. A waitress refilled my cup without asking. I didn't drink it. Malcolm had been right. The truth, no matter how ugly, is cleaner than any comfortable lie. I paid the check in cash, drove home under a sky pricked with early stars. The house looked exactly the same from the street, warm lamplight in the windows, Clara's rose trellis still climbing the porch post, but it was no longer a home. It was ground zero. I parked in the driveway. Didn't go inside yet. Instead, I walked to the workshop, unlocked the door, and sat at my bench. I pulled out a fresh legal pad. One vertical line down the center. Left column, protect. Right column, punish. I am a structural engineer. I have spent 40 years understanding exactly how things break and how to stop them before they do. Daniel and Lauren had just handed me the complete failure analysis of my own family. Now it was my turn to draw the new blueprint. Wednesday morning arrived wrapped in the kind of thin Oregon mist that blurs edges and hides intentions. I moved through my routine like a man reading from muscle memory. Oatmeal in Clara's favorite bowl. Black coffee scalding enough to remind me I was still breathing. Porch step to feed the stray tabby that never quite adopted me. Every motion deliberate. Every glance at the clock surgical. The house smelled of damp cedar and yesterday's rain, comforting, familiar, deceptive. At 9:47 a.m., my phone lit up. Daniel's name on the screen. I answered on the third ring. Voice even. Hey, Dad. Just checking in. You doing okay today? His tone was the practiced concern of a son who'd rehearsed the call. I pictured him standing in their kitchen, Lauren nearby, both of them watching my reaction like hawks tracking a wounded rabbit. I'm good, son, I said. Working on that oak side table for the guest room. How's Caleb? Great. Growing like a weed. Lauren's got him signed up for fall soccer. Listen, we were thinking of swinging by tomorrow afternoon. I could help you with that loose railing on the back steps if you want. The offer was textbook. Get me outside, occupied, hands full of tools, while they slipped into my office to photograph the original deed or hunt for bank login credentials I supposedly kept in the fire safe. I let a small, tired chuckle escape. That'd be great, Daniel. I'll put the kettle on. Bring Caleb if you like. He can hand me screws. Perfect. See you then, Dad. Love you. Love you too. The line went dead. I set the phone face down on the counter. The warmth drained from my face the instant the connection broke. They weren't coming to help. They were coming to harvest. I grabbed my keys. Not heading to the lumber yard. Not the hardware store. I drove straight to the Willow Creek Public Library. Neutral ground, public Wi-Fi. No personal digital trail. In the quiet stacks near the reference section, I claimed a terminal shielded by tall shelves. Searched, Elder Financial Abuse Attorney, Oregon Power of Attorney Fraud Specialist, Revocable Trust Revocation Urgent. One name rose consistently. Margaret Voss, 61. Former prosecutor turned private counsel, known for dismantling predatory family schemes with surgical precision. Reviews called her relentless, compassionate only to victims, and the attorney you call when trust has already been weaponized. I dialed from the library lobby. The receptionist heard the controlled urgency in my voice. Words like immediate revocation, suspected forgery, minor child at risk. She slotted me for Friday 9:45 a.m. Next stop, a small copy center 2 blocks over. The air inside smelled of hot toner and fresh reams. I scanned every file Malcolm had sent, time-stamped videos, stills of forged signatures, transcripts I typed myself while the machine hummed, bound them into a thick black 3-ring binder. Heavy, solid, undeniable. Driving home, the binder rode shotgun, seatbelt cinched tight like it might try to escape, copper taste in my mouth again. Adrenaline beginning to pool behind my eyes. I turned onto my street. Heart rate spiked. Lauren's white crossover sat in my driveway. Daniel's charcoal SUV idled behind it. They weren't due until tomorrow. Caleb burst from the porch the moment he saw my truck, waving a half-colored drawing of a dinosaur. I forced the grandfather's smile, practiced, automatic, painful. Daniel stepped down from the porch, casual in a navy polo. Behind him, a man in dark coveralls carried a slim leather case. Not a handyman. The tension wrench and bump key set hanging from his belt said locksmith, or worse, safe technician. They'd come early to crack the basement safe where I kept the physical deed. Or so they thought. I slid the binder under the passenger seat, deep into shadow. Stepped out. Caleb ran into my arms. I lifted him, inhaled the clean scent of child shampoo and crayons. The only pure thing left in this equation. Daniel approached, smile wide and artificial. Hey, Dad. Caleb wanted to see you early. And, well, we figured we'd get a head start on that railing. I nodded slowly. Of course. Come on in. Inside, Lauren was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, helping Caleb spread markers across the table. Picture-perfect stepmother. Daniel lingered in the hallway, eyes flicking toward the basement door. I played the part, slightly forgetful, grateful, harmless. Offered coffee. Asked about soccer practice. Watched Daniel's gaze drift again, once to the office door, once to the stairs. Over takeout pizza later, greasy pepperoni. The smell almost masking the tension. Daniel leaned in. We should really update that deed, Dad. Put the house in a trust. For Caleb's future. You know, protection. I chewed slowly. You're right, I said. Safety first. Always has been. Lauren's fork paused mid-air. Daniel's smile tightened at the edges. After they left, hugs, promises of tomorrow, tail lights fading down the street, I locked every door, checked every window, then went to the basement. The safe was untouched. Of course it was. The original deed hadn't been in there for 7 years. Redundant backup system, engineer's habit. It waited in a bank box downtown, registered under a trust only I controlled. I sat on the bottom step, pulled out my legal pad again. Protect, Caleb first. Then the house. Then whatever was left of my son. Punish, methodically, permanently, legally. 48 hours until Margaret Voss. 48 hours of wearing the mask while the blade sharpened itself in the dark. I climbed the stairs. The house creaked around me, old timbers settling. For the first time in days, the sound didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like warning. They thought they were dismantling me piece by piece. They had no idea I was already rebuilding. With steel, with evidence, with consequences. Thursday passed in a gray haze of forced normalcy. I pruned the last of Clara's rose canes, raked leaves that didn't need raking, fed the tabby twice just to have something alive to touch. Every mundane task was camouflage, keeping my hands busy while my mind ran stress calculations on the confrontation still 24 hours away. Daniel texted once at noon, "Caleb's got a fever. We'll have to postpone tomorrow." "Sorry, Dad. Love you." I stared at the message. Fever. Convenient. Or perhaps Lauren had seen something in my face the night before. Some micro-expression the engineer in me couldn't quite suppress. I replied, "No problem. Tell Caleb Grandpa's thinking of him. Feel better soon. No questions. No pushback. Just the compliant old man they expected." Behind the screen I was already moving pieces. I called Margaret Voss's office from the workshop, door locked, windows shut. Explained the new timeline, no visit tomorrow, but the threat window was narrowing. They needed the deed filed soon or their buyer would walk. Margaret's voice stayed level, professional steel. "We don't wait for them to act, Elias. We preempt. I've drafted the revocation packet and emergency restraining order based on the recordings. Bring everything tomorrow at 9:45 sharp. And Elias, do not engage them alone. Not even for Caleb." I agreed. Hung up. Then spent the afternoon in the basement, double-checking the empty safe they'd never find useful. I even left it slightly ajar. Bait. In case they came back tonight. They didn't. Friday morning broke cold and clear. I dressed in my best gray wool jacket, the one Clara said made me look dependable. Appropriate. Today I needed to look exactly like the trustworthy father they'd counted on. The law office smelled of lemon polish and old books. Margaret Voss met me in a conference room lined with framed bar admissions and one discreet photo of her shaking hands with a former governor. She was shorter than I expected, silver hair pulled back, eyes the color of winter river water. Calm, unreadable, lethal when focused. I placed the binder on the table between us. No small talk. I opened to the first tabbed section, still frames of Daniel's forged signature practice. Then the transcripts. Then timestamps proving every conversation happened inside my home. Margaret read in silence for 11 minutes. When she looked up, her expression hadn't changed, but something in the room felt heavier. "This isn't just fraud," she said quietly. "This is elder financial abuse with a minor endangered. The gambling syndicate mention alone triggers mandatory reporting. And the child leverage audio." She tapped the page. "That's felony conspiracy territory if we push it federal." I nodded once. "I want the power of attorney dead. Today. I want the house deed locked behind every wall the law allows. And I want Caleb's safe, emergency custody petition if necessary. She slid a fresh stack across the table. Revocation of POA. Notice of fraudulent conveyance. Temporary restraining order barring Daniel and Lauren from my property or accounts. Flag on my social security and credit files for identity theft. I signed each page with the same steady hand I once used on million-dollar bridge contracts. The notary's stamp came down like a gavel, sharp, final. Margaret made 3 calls while I waited. First to my primary bank, electronic notice of revocation sent, accounts frozen pending review. Second to the county recorder, alert that any deed transfer attempted under the revoked authority would be flagged as fraudulent on site. Third to a contact at Child Protective Services, preliminary report filed, naming Caleb as at risk due to parental gambling debt and explicit threats captured on audio. By 11:20 a.m., the first domino had fallen. My liquid assets, $740,000 spread across 3 accounts, were now in a new individual trust account requiring in-person, dual-authenticated approval for any movement over $1,000. I walked out of the office lighter by several pounds of paper and several tons of dread. Straight to First Willow Credit Union. Met with my longtime advisor Susan. Showed her the certified revocation. Watched her face go from polite to professionally alarmed as she read the gambling and child threat excerpts. Elias. This is serious. We'll lock everything down, and I have to report this to fraud compliance. Do it, I said. Within 40 minutes, my accounts were sealed tighter than a pressure vessel. Daniel's attempted balance inquiry from yesterday morning was already flagged. Timestamped 2 hours before my revocation went live. I sat in the parking lot afterward, engine off, breathing. For the first time in 10 days, the copper taste in my mouth was gone, replaced by something colder, cleaner. Resolve. I drove home. The house looked quiet. No cars in the drive. No shadows at the windows. Inside, I went directly to the workshop. Opened my laptop. Logged into the secondary camera feed I'd quietly installed in their garage 2 years ago, when Daniel borrowed my trailer and forgot to return it for 6 weeks. The feed showed Daniel pacing their living room, phone to his ear. Lauren sat on the couch, knees drawn up, staring at nothing. Daniel's voice came through tinny but clear. The bank says revoked. Everything's frozen. He knows, Lauren. The old man knows. Lauren's reply was small. What do we do now? Daniel stopped pacing, looked straight at the camera he didn't know existed. We go to the county recorder first thing Monday. Use the backup notary packet. If we file before they update the system, he trailed off. Realization dawning. He's already blocked it, hasn't he? Lauren didn't answer. She just started to cry, quiet, hopeless sobs. I closed the laptop. They still had 1 play left. Monday morning. County recorder's office. Forged backup documents. I picked up my phone. Dialed Margaret. It's happening Monday at opening, I said. We need to be ready. Her answer was immediate. Process server will meet us there at 8:45. We serve them in the lobby, right before they reach the counter. And Elias, bring the tablet. They need to hear their own voices when the trap closes. I hung up. Looked at the legal pad still open on the bench. Protect column, all checked. Punish column, 1 final box waiting. Monday. The endgame. Monday morning arrived with the brittle clarity of frost on windshield glass. I left the house at 7:50 a.m., truck engine rumbling low so neighbors wouldn't notice the early departure. No coffee, no oatmeal, only the weight of the tablet in my coat pocket and the binder Margaret had augmented over the weekend, now containing sworn affidavits, bank freeze confirmations, and a preliminary CP's intake report naming Caleb as endangered. I met Margaret and the process server, a broad-shouldered ex-deputy named Reyes, in the county recorder parking lot at 8:42. We walked in together. The lobby smelled of fresh photocopier toner and institutional coffee. A digital display above the counter ticked, now serving, #17. Daniel and Lauren arrived at 8:57. He wore the same navy polo from Thursday, attempt at normalcy. She clutched a thin folder to her chest like a shield, eyes red-rimmed, movements jerky. They didn't see us at first. They headed straight for the deed recording window. Margaret stepped forward first. "Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne?" Daniel froze mid-stride. Lauren's folder slipped an inch. She caught it against her ribs. Margaret held up the thick envelope. "You are being served with notice of revocation of power of attorney, immediate asset freeze, temporary restraining order, and preliminary notice of fraud investigation. These documents are effective immediately." Reyes moved to Daniel's left flank, professional, unobtrusive, but unmistakably blocking any sudden exit. Daniel's face flushed crimson. "This is harassment. You can't just—" Margaret didn't blink. "We can, and we have. The county clerk has already been electronically notified. Any attempt to record under the revoked authority today will be rejected and flagged for criminal review." Lauren's voice cracked. "Dad?" I stepped out from behind Margaret then, just far enough for them to see me clearly. I didn't speak. Not yet. Daniel rounded on me. "You think this stops anything? We have backup docs. We have." I pulled the tablet from my pocket. Tapped the screen once. The lobby speakers, small but surprisingly loud thanks to Margaret's pre-arranged permission, began playing audio clip #1. Daniel's own voice, intimate and late night from my kitchen. "Once the sale closes, I'm out. Lauren thinks she's coming to Belize. She's useful for now. Good signature, good cover. After that, she's excess weight. Pack light, sweetheart. Belize is warm year-round." The clip silence rushed in like water through a broken dam. Lauren turned slowly toward Daniel. Her expression wasn't anger yet, just blank, stunned disbelief, like watching someone she thought she knew dissolve into someone else entirely. Daniel tried. "That's edited, out of context. He's twisting." Clip #2 began without warning. The playground audio. Daniel's calm, transactional tone describing Caleb's recess schedule, 10:40 a.m. He's always by the east fence with the blue slide. "You want photos for leverage? Easy. Just make sure the payment posts by the 30th. Lauren made a small animal sound, half sob, half choke. The folder fell. Papers scattered across the linoleum like dead leaves. Daniel lunged for the tablet. Reyes intercepted smoothly, armbar, wrist lock, cheek pressed to the nearest wall in under 3 seconds. No drama, just physics. Margaret continued, voice level. "Because the recording includes an explicit threat to a minor, we have already forwarded copies to the district attorney and federal task force, monitoring the syndicate you referenced. Your passport has been flagged. Travel advisories issued." Daniel's breathing came in harsh bursts against the paint. "You recorded me in my own father's house. That's illegal." "One-party consent state," Margaret said flatly. "And it was his house, his cameras, his rules." I finally spoke. My voice carried across the suddenly hushed lobby. "You bartered your son's safety for gambling debts, Daniel. You planned to abandon your wife after you sold my home out from under me. You thought I was too old, too trusting, too broken since Clara died to notice." I looked at Lauren. She was crying silently now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. "You helped him, Lauren. You signed the addendum pages. You lied to my face. But you're still Caleb's mother. You still have one choice left." I held up a single sheet, CP's emergency custody petition. "Cooperate fully, testify, provide every contact, every account detail, or the state takes Caleb while this plays out in court." Your call. Right now. Lauren looked from me to Daniel, still pinned, still seething, to the scattered papers at her feet. Then back to me. I'll talk, she whispered. I'll tell them everything. Daniel's roar was immediate. You traitor. Reyes tightened the hold. Daniel went quiet. Margaret nodded to Reyes. Detain him until sheriff's deputies arrive. Fraudulent conveyance attempt in progress plus outstanding felony warrants from the task force. I turned away as two uniforms entered through the side door. Didn't watch them cuff him. Didn't need to. Lauren sank to the bench near the water fountain, hands shaking. I didn't know about the playground. I swear, Dad, I thought it was just money. I thought we'd fix it later. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the counter, handed the clerk the original deed from my safety deposit box. Clean, unencumbered, mine alone. Record this reaffirmation of sole ownership, I said. Today, the clerk nodded. Stamp came down. Final. Outside, the frost was burning off under weak November sun. Margaret placed a hand on my shoulder, brief, professional. Caleb's school has been notified. Officer will stay until pickup. He's safe. I exhaled. Long, slow. The first wall had fallen, but the structure still had fractures running deep. Lauren stood up, approached me hesitantly. Dad, I'm sorry. I looked at her, really looked. Saw the girl who used to sit on Clara's lap reading garden catalogs. Saw the woman who helped forge my signature anyway. You have one path forward, I told her. Tell the truth. Protect Caleb. Earn back whatever pieces are left. That's all I'm offering. She nodded, tears falling freely now. I walked to my truck, didn't look back. The recorder's stamp still echoed in my ears, a small metallic sound, absolute finality. But the real work, the rebuilding, was only beginning. The days after the courthouse confrontation folded into a quiet, methodical aftermath, like the slow settling of dust after a controlled demolition. No explosions, no shouting matches in parking lots, just the steady, grinding work of containment and reconstruction. Daniel was processed that afternoon. Fingerprints. Mugshot. Preliminary hearing set for 2 weeks later. The federal task force, already tracking the syndicate, moved faster once Margaret handed over the full audio archive. Within 48 hours, they had search warrants for Daniel's devices, bank records, and the burner phone he used for business. By Wednesday, they executed coordinated raids across 3 states. 4 arrests. The man Daniel owed, the one who'd been given Caleb's recess schedule, was taken in a motel parking lot outside Reno, still holding the envelope of photos Daniel had mailed as good faith. The playground threat evaporated overnight. Hawthorne Elementary added temporary security cameras along the east fence. Caleb's teacher was briefed. A plainclothes officer stayed near the recess yard for 2 weeks. No one came for him. No one ever would again. Lauren cooperated from hour 1. She met Margaret and a DA investigator in a neutral conference room the next morning. Signed immunity agreements in exchange for full testimony. Handed over every email, every text chain, every backup notary stamp Daniel had hidden in their garage freezer behind frozen peas. She cried through most of it. Not performative tears, but the kind that come when someone finally sees the cage they helped build around themselves. Margaret called me that evening. She's broken, Elias. But she's choosing Caleb over loyalty to Daniel. The DA won't pursue charges against her if her testimony holds. Emergency custody hearing is Friday. Temporary sole custody to you until the divorce finalizes. I sat in the workshop while she spoke, running a sanding block over a scrap of cherry, mindless, repetitive motion to keep my hands from shaking. Good, I said. Keep me updated. Friday came fast. Family court smelled of old carpet and printer ink. Lauren sat on one side of the aisle in a plain gray sweater, hair pulled back, no makeup, looking 10 years younger, and 10 years older at the same time. I sat on the other with Margaret. Caleb wasn't there. A social worker had kept him at school with coloring books, and a promise Grandpa would pick him up soon. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and no patience for excuses, reviewed the filings in silence. Listened to Lauren's sworn statement. Watched 10 minutes of selected audio clips. When Daniel's voice described selling photos of his own son for leverage, the judge's jaw tightened visibly. Temporary order granted. Sole physical and legal custody to me pending final divorce and criminal proceedings. Supervised visitation for Lauren, twice weekly, 2 hours each, at my house. No contact with Daniel until further notice. Lauren didn't fight it. She only looked at me once as she left the courtroom, eyes red, pleading for something I wasn't ready to give. I nodded once. That was all. I picked Caleb up from school at 3:15. He ran out clutching a construction paper turkey he'd made for Thanksgiving. Grandpa, Mom said I get to stay with you for a while. Is Dad coming too? I knelt so we were eye level. Your dad has some grown-up problems to fix, buddy. He won't be around for a bit. But you and me, we've got the workshop. We've got the garden. We've got time. He thought about that. Then grinned. Can we build a birdhouse? Like the one you made for Grandma's blue jays? First thing tomorrow, I promised. That night he fell asleep in the guest room. Clara's old sewing room, curled under the quilt she'd pieced herself. I stood in the doorway watching his chest rise and fall. The only sound, soft breathing, and the distant tick of the hall clock. For the first time in weeks, the house didn't feel hollow. It felt held together. Saturday morning we started the birdhouse. Caleb stood on the low-step stool I'd built years ago for Daniel when he was that age. Small hands guided by mine, sanding pine boards smooth. He asked questions non-stop. Why wood splits if you sand against the grain? Why nails bend sometimes? Why glue smells funny? I answered each one carefully. Not just the how, but the why. Because some things are built to last. Others aren't. And knowing the difference is the only way to keep from losing everything. Around noon, Lauren arrived for her first supervised visit. She brought Caleb's favorite dinosaur book and a bag of grocery store cookies. Sat at the kitchen table while he showed her the half-finished birdhouse. I stayed in the workshop doorway, close enough to hear, far enough to give space. She didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't make excuses, just listened to Caleb talk about school, about the turkey project, about how Grandpa lets him use the hand plane but only if I wear the goggles. When the 2 hours ended, she hugged him tight, whispered something in his ear that made him nod solemnly, then looked at me over his head. Thank you, she said quietly, for not taking him away completely. I didn't reply, just watched her walk to her car, shoulders straighter than they'd been in months. Caleb tugged my sleeve. Mom said she's sorry. She said she made big mistakes. Is she in trouble like Dad? I crouched again. Mom made choices she wishes she could undo. She's working hard to fix them. That's what matters now. He considered that. Can we finish the birdhouse today? We can finish it today. We worked until the light turned golden and the November chill drove us inside. The birdhouse sat on the bench, simple, sturdy, ready for paint. Caleb traced the small entrance hole with his finger. Grandma's blue jays will like it. They'll be safe. I placed my hand over his. Yes, they'll be safe. That night I sat at the kitchen table with a fresh legal pad. New columns. Rebuild. Protect. Forgive. When earned. The punish column was finally crossed out. Not because Daniel didn't deserve it, but because the structure no longer needed demolition. It needed reinforcement. I looked out the window at the dark garden. Clara's roses slept under frost, roots deep, waiting for spring. The house was quiet. But for once the quiet felt like peace, not absence. Winter settled over Willow Creek like a heavy quilt, snow piling soft and silent on the garden beds, on the workshop roof, on the memories that had once threatened to bury everything. The house stood unchanged from the outside. Same white clapboard, same rose trellis now skeletal under frost, same warm light spilling from the kitchen window each evening. But inside, the structure had been quietly, permanently altered. Daniel's trial came and went in the new year. Plea deal, 7 years federal for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit identity theft, and endangerment of a minor. He would serve at least 5 before parole consideration. Lauren testified for 3 days straight, voice steady, eyes fixed on the judge, never once looking at the defense table where Daniel sat in an ill-fitting suit. When it was over, she walked out of the courthouse alone. No one waited for her on the steps. Caleb asked about his father only once, 3 weeks after the sentencing. We were in the workshop, staining the finished birdhouse a deep forest green. He held the brush carefully, tongue between his teeth. "Is Dad ever coming back, Grandpa?" I set my own brush down. "Your dad made choices that hurt a lot of people, including you and your mom. He has to stay away for a long time so he can think about those choices. But you're safe here. Always." Caleb nodded slowly, then dipped the brush again. "Okay. Can the Blue Jays live in this house forever?" "They can stay as long as they want," I said. We hung the birdhouse on the shepherd's hook outside the kitchen window the next morning. Within 40 minutes, a pair of jays inspected it, chattering approval. Caleb pressed his nose to the glass and grinned. "They like it." Lauren's supervised visits continued. Every Sunday, 2 hours, always in the kitchen or the living room. She brought books, board games, homemade cookies that tasted like apology. She never asked to stay longer. Never asked for money beyond the modest monthly stipend I'd arranged through the trust Margaret set up. She worked full-time now at the town library, shelving books, helping children with homework, saving half her paycheck in a small account she never touched. A quiet, consistent attempt at repair. One Sunday in late February, she arrived carrying a flat package wrapped in brown paper. Caleb tore it open. A framed photo of Clara holding him as a newborn, taken in the garden the summer before she got sick. Lauren had found it in storage, had it restored and matted. Caleb carried it straight to the mantel, placed it between Clara's wedding portrait and the birdhouse sketch he'd drawn last month. Lauren watched him, then looked at me. "I kept the negatives," she said softly. "There are more, whenever he wants them." I nodded. "Thank you." She left at the 2-hour mark. No hug goodbye, just a small wave from the driveway. Caleb waved back through the storm door. Spring came hesitant, March rain, then April sun that finally melted the last stubborn patches of snow. The garden woke slowly. Caleb and I turned the beds, planted new rose cuttings from Clara's favorites. He learned to use the dibber, to water at the base so leaves didn't burn, to watch for aphids like tiny green invaders. One Saturday in May, Lauren arrived for her visit carrying a canvas bag. Inside, gardening gloves sized for small hands, a child-sized trowel, and a packet of wildflower seeds. "Thought we could plant something together," she said. Caleb looked at me. I nodded. The 3 of us knelt in the dirt for 2 hours, longer than the court order allowed. But no one checked a stopwatch. Lauren showed Caleb how to press seeds into the soil, how to pat them gently so they felt secure. He asked her why some flowers come back every year and others don't. She answered carefully. Some roots go deep enough to survive winter, others need to be replanted. But even the ones that die leave seeds behind. New ones grow from them. When the visit timer ended, Caleb hugged her, spontaneous, fierce. Lauren held him a moment longer than usual, then let go. She looked at me over his head. I'm starting the financial counseling classes next week. The ones the court recommended. Good, I said. Keep going. She nodded, walked to her car. This time she paused at the driver's door, looked back at the garden, at the three of us standing together in the late afternoon light. Then she got in and drove away. Caleb tugged my sleeve. Can Mom plant with us again next Sunday? We'll see, I told him. But today we finished the bed. Come on. We worked until the sun dipped low and the air turned cool again. When we finally stood back, the new row looked small, fragile, tiny seeds under fresh soil, trusting the season to do its work. That night, Caleb fell asleep, holding the framed photo of Clara and baby him. I sat in the workshop for a long time, lights off, only the green glow of the charging tablet on the bench. I opened the remote feed app one last time, saw Lauren's small apartment, light on in the kitchen, her silhouette moving quietly as she unpacked groceries. I watched for 30 seconds. Then I deleted the app, wiped the login, closed the laptop. No more cameras, no more silent watching. The perimeter was secure, not because I needed to guard it anymore, but because the threat had finally been removed from the inside out. I walked to the back door, stepped onto the porch, looked at the garden under moonlight, rows neat, soil dark and waiting. Clara's roses already showing new growth, stubborn red tips pushing through. I whispered to the night air. The roots are deep enough now. Then I went inside, turned the lock behind me, not to keep anything out, but simply because it was time to close the door on the cold. The house was quiet. But it was a living quiet, full of small sounds. The refrigerator humming, wind moving the wind chimes Clara hung years ago, Caleb's soft breathing down the hall. I set the master key in the anniversary bowl on the counter. The ceramic clink sounded like completion. No more secrets, no more recordings. Just a man, a boy, and a garden learning how to grow again. The fortress had served its purpose. Now it was simply home. Good night, Clara. The project is finished.